In Argentina, the historic leader and president of the Mothers of Plaza de Mayo organization, Hebe de Bonafini, died at the age of 93. In Kazakhstan, preliminary counts of the early presidential elections called a victory for the incumbent Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, granting him a third term and re-election. In Indonesia, about 55 people died after a 5.6 magnitude earthquake that shook West Java province. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Hebe de Bonafini, the president of the Argentine human rights organization Mothers of Plaza de Mayo, died at the age of 93 this Sunday. Bonafini was a strong fighter against the human rights violations committed against the people and during the country's military dictatorship in the 1990s and 1980s, driven by the disappearances of her sons, Jorge Omar and Raúl Alfredo, both kidnapped by the military dictatorships in February and December 1977. Bonafini joined the mothers who walked around the pyramid of the center of Plaza de Mayo to demand their sons' safe return. From that moment on, she became a symbol of that struggle for human rights in Argentina and the world, defending underprivileged communities and denouncing neoliberalism worldwide. The death of the human rights leader was confirmed by the Vice President Cristina Fernandez, who thanked her for her relentless work. Meanwhile, Argentinian Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner showed her sorrow for the passing of the leader of Mothers of Plaza de Mayo, Hebe Bonafini, adding that she was a world symbol of the fight for human rights and the pride of Argentina. Fernández de Kirchner said God called the leader on the day of national sovereignty, which should not be a coincidence. Joining those who expressed their admiration for Hebe de Bonafini, the Secretary General of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, Sasha Lorenti, said that words were not enough to thank the leader of Mothers of Plaza de Mayo for everything she gave to the cause. He also said that Bonafini planted leaves, fruits of memory, dignity, justice, solidarity, consistency, and above all, much love. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, emphasized that the Patria Grande, the big homeland, honors a valuable woman, a fighter and a deeply revolutionary who on November 20th became eternal. The Venezuelan head of state also said that Hebe de Bonafini will be forever remembered in the hearts of the Venezuelan and Latin American people. And former Bolivian President Evo Morales expressed his sadness and dismay by the departure of Sister Hebe de Bonafini. Morales stressed that Bonafini was a historic, highly respected and beloved figure, not only in Argentina, but in the whole world. Lastly, the former Bolivian head of state also said that Bonafini's tireless and incorruptible fight against dictatorships for memory, truth and justice is an example for the new generations. And now we move on to other topics. In Colombia, at least 4 new murders of social leaders were registered over the weekend. The Institute for Development and Peace Studies reported the homicide of Kerubin Mendoza and Johnny Rodriguez in the department of Guaviare and of Juan Gualberto Gejia Petecho and Alberto Quina in the Cauca department. Mendoza and Rodriguez were recognized former leaders in the municipality of San José del Guaviare and had disappeared since last October. Gejia Petecho was a member of the NASA Indigenous Reserve of Pitayo, located in Cauca, while Quina was president of the Community Action Board in the municipality of Cajibio. With these 4 deaths, the number of social leaders killed in 2022 increased to 168, bringing the total to 1,395 since the signing of Colombia's peace agreement. Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, announced a new water plan that will benefit the indigenous Wayuu populations of La Guajira. According to the Colombian president, this program, which involves the identification, recovery and maintenance of infrastructure in the territory, was designed as part of the national government's priorities in joint efforts with other entities, the governor's office, municipalities, community members, business sectors and cooperation agencies. Petro explained that the Housing, City and Territory Ministry has been developing several initiatives based on a comprehensive diagnosis of the sector and in response to the most urgent needs of the communities. In this regard, he indicated that work is underway to complete the infrastructure inventory and subsequently interventions will be scheduled according to the needs. A few thousand Brazilians gathered at the 19th edition of the March for Black Awareness Day that took place on the main avenue of Sao Paulo. Many of them expressed a desire for racial issues to be among the primary concerns of the future government of President-elect Luis Inácio Lula da Silva.
What black people are. His government didn't even have black people. I saw it on television. There were no black people. With President-elect Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, not only racial issues are going to be important, but also indigenous issues. Now we will have real space, and it will be recognized. Not just anyone will be able to take it away from us.
We'll take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news, updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. At least 5 people were killed and 18 wounded in a mass shooting at an LGBTQI Springs, police said on Sunday. 2 firearms, including a long rifle, were found at the scene at the Club Q, said Colorado Springs Police Department Chief Adrian Vasquez. Partygoers, who were apparently celebrating Transgender Day of Remembrance, were surprised by the shooting. This suggests the 6th shooting this month and comes in a year in which the nation was rocked by the deaths of 21 people in a school shooting in Uvalde, Texas.
The scene at Club Q. Initial evidence and interviews indicate that the suspect entered Club Q and immediately began shooting at people inside as he moved further into the club. While the suspect was inside of the club, at least 2 heroic people inside the club confronted and fought with the suspect and were able to stop the suspect from continuing to kill and harm others. We owe them a great debt of thanks. As the investigation is still in its early stages, we are not going to identify any of the witnesses inside of the club at this time. The FBI is already on scene and assisting with the investigation. We are also working to identify the victims who have died and notify their families. Please be patient with the identification of the victims, as a first priority is to the victims' families.
On Sunday, the Inter-American Development Bank, the ADB, elected Brazilian Ilan Goldfeijão as a new president. Ilan Goldfeijão was elected as an extraordinary meeting of the bank's Board of Governors held at the bank's headquarters in Washington, USA, with both virtual and physical delegations participating. As president, Goldfeijão will oversee the bank's operations and management, chair the Inter-American Development Bank's executive board, and the executive board of the Inter-American Development Bank Invest, which works with the region's private sector. Brazilian Goldfeijão will be the 7th president of the ADB, a position he will hold for a 5-year term. And on Sunday, participants in the Great Ethiopian Race cheered the recent peace agreement with Tigray. According to local media, over 40,000 runners showed their joy and approval to the peace agreement between the Ethiopian government and the Tigray rebels, expressing their hope that the race could be held in Mekelle, Tigray's capital. The runners also expressed their wish that there is peace or no peace, they can't breathe serenity and go to run in the city of Mekelle. Meanwhile, Ethiopia's most famous long-distance runner and founder of the Great Ethiopian Race, Haile Gebrselassie, added that thanks to the peace, over 40,000 people can fulfill their dream of running in a peaceful environment. And the people of the Central African country of Equatorial Guinea went to the polls on Sunday to elect their new president and representatives in both parliamentary chambers. Out of a population of less than 2 million, about 400,000 voters are expected to cast their ballots between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. local time. The fate of the Central African country is being decided among 3 political parties in the presence of observers from the African Union and the Community of Portuguese-Speaking Countries delegation. Incumbent President Teodoro Obiang Nguema is the candidate of the Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea. He has been in power since 1979 and is seeking a 6th term. In Syria, at least 3 military were killed on Sunday after a wave of airstrikes carried out by Turkish air forces in the north of the country. The events took place in northern Syria as part of a special air operation where 89 aerial targets were destroyed. Following this, Turkish Defense Ministry stated that the aim of the attack is to guarantee the security of these 85 million citizens, protecting the national borders and retaliate for any treacherous attacks. All of this after the attack occurred in Istanbul on November 13, in which 6 people died and 81 were wounded. In this context, Turkish Interior Minister said that the order to launch the attack came from the city of Kobane, a stronghold of the Kurdish forces in northern Syria. And the United Nations Organization, the UN, condemned the recent attacks against Palestinians committed by Israeli settlers. The special envoy of the International Organization for the Middle East Peace Process, Tor Wennesland, assured that the violent acts could worsen an already tense environment. Wennesland warned Israel that everyone has the responsibility to act against extremists and to speak out against acts of violence and incitement in the region. This Saturday, a group of heavily armed Jewish settlers were escorted by militaries and attacked 2 mosques during a demonstration in the Arab neighborhood of Bab al-Zawiya. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Kazakhstan, the results of the preliminary count of the early presidential elections gave 81.31% to Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, and the incumbent has been re-elected for a new term. Due to the reform approved this year, the new mandate will be extended for 7 years. Kassym-Jomart Tokayev wins 81.31% of the votes, announced the head of the Central Election Commission, Nurlan Abdirov, on Monday. The turnout at the polls exceeded 69.44%, and the blank vote in this Sunday's elections accounted for 5.80% of the total. Meanwhile, in their opinion, the observers of the Community of Independent States, the CAS, did not detect any irregularities in the preparation of these elections and in the course of the election day. Now we address other topics. The International Atomic Energy Agency condemned a series of explosions that hit the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant area on Sunday. The Director General of the organization, Rafael Mariano Grossi, stressed the urgent need for measures to help prevent a nuclear accident in the nuclear power plant. Citing information provided by plant management, the agency team said damage had occurred to some buildings, systems, and equipment at the plant, but none so far critical to nuclear safety and security. There were no reports of casualties. Grossi confirmed that experts from the Atomic Energy Agency are in close contact with site management and will continue to assess and report on the situation. And Renat Korsha, the director of the Russian State Nuclear Energy Corporation Rosenergoatom, informed that Ukrainian armed forces bombed this Sunday the Zaporizhia power plant's special block number 2, where fresh nuclear fuel is stored. Korsha further detailed that impacts were registered in the area of storage of fuel in dry containers. This Saturday, the Ukrainian armed forces also carried out a massive attack on the power plant. These actions caused damage to some buildings, systems, and equipment at the site, but none of them so far critical to nuclear safety and the security, as there was no casualties reported. Now we move on to other topics. In Indonesia, the death toll rises to 55 after a 5.6 magnitude earthquake that shook on Monday the province of West Java, the most populated island on the country, with almost 50 million inhabitants. In addition, important damages in residences and infrastructures are reported. This was informed by the spokesperson of the government of Cianjur, the city closest to the epicenter of the earthquake. Meanwhile, the National Agency for Disaster Management, the BNPB in Indonesian, confirms for the moment a total of 14 deaths and 17 injured due to the earthquake. The earthquake occurred at 1:21 p.m. local time, with the hypocenter at the depth of 10 kilometers and the epicenter at 16.7 kilometers from the locality of Cianjur. The Indonesian Agency of Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics put the magnitude of the earthquake at 5.6 and ruled out the potential for a tsunami. Continuous rain in western Albania has flooded hundreds of hectares of land, temporarily cut power supplies to some areas, and forced families to evacuate. The country's defense minister, Niko Polishi, said that due to nearly 200 millimeters of rain in the last 24 hours in northwestern Stroka and Leza, at least 500 hectares have been flooded and rural roads have been damaged. Police said that a car with 3 people in was reported missing after being caught up in a stream of water in Churuk village, Skodra district. Defense Minister Peleshi also said that emergency personnel and the army were on alert as rain is expected to continue on Monday. And the World Cup kicks off with host nation Qatar facing Ecuador on Sunday, as the month-long football showpiece finally gets underway. Foreign government officials, VIPs, and celebrities were in the crowd as the first World Cup stage in the Arab world opened at the Bedouin tent-inspired Al Bayt Stadium in Al Khor, 50 kilometers outside of Doha. The 30-minute opening ceremony featured South Korean K-pop star Jungkook and the U.S. actor Morgan Freeman, giving a message of diversity. Ecuador secured their first victory at the opening match, 0-2, having known a real chance of qualifying from Group A. Ecuadorian forward Ener Valencia from the penalty spot, and the second following Angelo Preciado's assist. Valencia became the top scorer of Ecuador's national team with 5 goals. Qatar, on its part, became the first host nation to lose on the opening match. On day 2, England will face Iran, Senegal go in a match against the Netherlands, and the United States will measure force with Wales. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.